Howdy, it's Kyle talking about Midtowns. Almost every city in the country has a downtown, which is normally its central business district, except for Charlotte, which is way too cool for a downtown. But many cities also have a midtown, and more often than not, this is a pretty cool part of town. This is often where you have some interesting entertainment options, local shops, bars, restaurants, boutique kind of things. And it's often just a really fun part of town to hang out in. So here I want to talk about some different midtowns throughout the U.S., what makes them interesting, and why you get so many interesting parts of town in midtowns. I'm going to start with Midtown Atlanta, ones I'm quite familiar with. This one, like most other midtowns, takes its name because it's located between the downtown, the central business district, and another prominent part of the city. So you think of the most famous midtown, which is Manhattan, and that's located north of the financial district, the World Trade Center, that stuff at the south end of Manhattan Island, but south of Central Park. And just like Manhattan, for Atlanta, Midtown is north of the central business district, but here it's south of the Buckhead district. And like many other midtowns, it's also framed by other major things in the city. So in the case of Midtown Atlanta, to the west is the campus of Georgia Tech, and to the east is the large Piedmont Park, the largest park in the city. So with it being just north of downtown, just east of a major college campus, and just south of a big rich area, you can see why the Midtown area has a lot of vibrancy. This is the main part of town for many theaters, including the Puppetry Arts Museum and Playhouse. And it's also the main part of town for art museums, including the High Museum of Art, the Modern Art Museum, the Museum of Design, and the Arts Center. And this ends up being the most urbanist part of town, a lot of great local restaurants, bars, and boutique shops. There's no part of Atlanta that's truly walkable, but Midtown is the one part of town that's kinda sorta walkable. And like most of the other midtowns all mentioned, this is a very desirable part of the city in which to live. Atlanta is already pretty expensive, but Midtown is expensive even for Atlanta. Next, I'm going to Missouri and Kansas City's Midtown. And very similar to Atlanta, the Midtown here is between downtown and the wealthiest part of the city. In this case, the Central Business District and the Crown Center is just north of Midtown, and the wealthy upscale Country Club Plaza is just south of Midtown. And a pretty similar trend here is midtowns are often the part of town where you have many of the theaters and museums, and that is the case in Kansas City. You often get some funky and avant-garde theaters, some off Broadway kind of stuff. And this is also the part of town where you have the huge Kansas City Art Museum. And like many of the midtowns all mentioned, this is also where you have the most vibrant nightlife scene in the city, especially in the Westport district. Here you've got a lot of coffee shops and bakeries, bars, pubs, dives, and clubs. And you also have some off-the-wall funky boutique shops. And with it being Kansas City, there better be some barbecue there as well, and there is. The west end of this district is the state line with Kansas, and there's simply a state line road that is the boundary. So with the downtown and the jazz clubs being just north of here, and the ritzy Country Club Plaza area being just south of here, Midtown in between is a great part of Kansas City. Now going cross-state, I'm going to the Midtown in St. Louis. For here, the Midtown is located west of the downtown CBD where you have the Arch and the Mississippi River, and east of the campus of St. Louis University. And this is a case where the Midtown is a secondary CBD. If you were to just look at the skyline of Midtown St. Louis, it would look more like the downtown of a more medium-sized city. Midtowns in Atlanta and Kansas City never went through big periods of blight, but Midtown St. Louis did. But there's been a lot of gentrification in the area, with many of the old buildings being turned into theaters and performance halls. And St. Louis is another city where the Midtown is home to the major Museum of Art. And just like many of the other ones I'll mention, proximity to universities adds to the vibrancy of the Midtown. So for here, again, St. Louis University is located just west of Midtown, and right in Midtown is Harris-Stowe State University. One of the newer developments in Midtown is called the City Foundry. This was a huge former machine shop, and it was turned into a huge development with a wide variety of restaurants. There's a bit of a hipster food scene there, and in many ways it's similar to some of those live type developments you've seen in many other cities, including Kansas City's Power and Light District. However, a big difference with the one in St. Louis is that it's almost all local type restaurants and shops. So a lot of really cool neighborhoods in St. Louis. I especially like some of the ones that are in the south central part of the city, but Midtown right in the middle is also pretty nice too. Next, I'm going to California and Sacramento's Midtown. For here, Midtown is located east of the downtown and government district, but west of the big business route for I-80. And Sacramento is the easiest city in the country in which to navigate the main part of the city. So all the east-west streets are letters of the alphabet, and the north-south streets are numbers. So finding where you're going there is like playing the old board game Battleship. I'm going to R26. J Street is the main east-west route through there. A lot of great local shops, restaurants, boutiques there. And just like almost all of the other Midtowns I'll be mentioning, this is the part of town that has many art galleries. There's an art walk. There's also music festivals in the neighborhood. And Midtown is the prime neighborhood for Sacramento, the neighborhood around it called Lavender Heights. And one of the top things that the Midtown in Sacramento is known for is the huge farmers market. Sacramento calls itself the farm to fork capital. A lot of agriculture in the area, and the farmers market in Midtown is pretty nice. And even though a good chunk of Sacramento is not very walkable, Midtown is. Everywhere from downtown through Midtown is all pretty good for pedestrians. At the east end of Midtown is Sutter's Fort, which is one of the oldest European settlements in California. And just across from there is Sutter Memorial Hospital, where I was born. So you put those two things together, this is probably the most important block in all of California. Sacramento is a relatively affordable town for California, but Midtown is pretty expensive and it is a pretty desirable part of town to live. Now I'm going to head over to Tennessee and the Midtown in Memphis. The Midtown here is east of the CBD downtown and west of Overton Park, which is the largest green space in the city. Unlike many of the other Midtowns, not many of the big sites in the city are going to be in this part of town. This is not the medical district or the St. Jude's Hospital area. This is not where you have the music studios. It's not where the University of Memphis campus is. It's not near the Botanical Gardens, and it's not near the Mississippi River. Overton Square is the heart of the district, and like most of the other Midtowns here, it's filled with local shops, restaurants, and bars. And just like Kansas City, there better be a couple of barbecue joints nearby, and there are. And this is another one where the main art museum is located in Midtown. It's actually located as part of Overton Park. Within Midtown is a spot called Cooper Young, and this is where you have some funky local businesses, an annual art festival, and there's something really cool called Porch Fest. This is a small venue music festival where people just go from door to door, sit on people's porches and play. Although this isn't the wealthiest part of the city, it is still relatively expensive for Memphis. The residential area called Central Gardens is really nice. For most people that visit Memphis, they're usually going to be going to some of the music museums or studios and often don't go to some of the funky neighborhoods, but Midtown Memphis is a pretty cool area around Overton Square and Cooper Young. So yes, there are hipsters even in Memphis, Tennessee, and most of them are found in Midtown. Now I'm going up to the shores of Lake Erie and Cleveland, Ohio. In a video talking about great downtowns in the US, I mentioned Cleveland. I think it's one of the better big city downtowns in the country. And when talking about cool, kind of funky, up-and-coming neighborhoods, I talked about the Little Italy University area in eastern Cleveland. And as you may have guessed, Midtown is the part of town in between those two. But the Midtown in between got pretty dilapidated and blighted in the late 20th century. So check out some of these Google Street images of the main street going through Midtown, east of downtown, west of the Cleveland Clinic. You can see the beginnings of some gentrification here, some of these newer buildings, some newer apartments. The residential areas just south of Midtown are still pretty rough for the most part, but there was a lot of blight. Many of the old abandoned homes were cleared, and now they're empty lots, and some of the older ones that were fixable have been fixed up, and there's also some new housing going up as well. And Midtown would be the primary business area for any gentrified neighborhood directly adjacent to it. So you have a nice foundation for what could be a great neighborhood, and if Midtown Cleveland does become a nice place, you will have one large contiguous blob of Cleveland. It's all really nice, going from downtown all the way to the Cleveland Clinic. I think some of the biggest issues for Cleveland are its perception, and there are plenty of problems in the city. Some of the worst blight you're going to see in the country is there, but there's a lot of good things going on in Cleveland, and Midtown might be one of the cool neighborhoods in the future. Okay, now I'm headed to Texas and the Midtown in Houston. Like all the other ones, it's directly adjacent to downtown. In this case, it's just southwest of downtown, and it's northeast of the big Herman Park, which is where the Houston Zoo is. However, the Midtown in Houston did see quite a bit of economic downturn and blight in the late 20th century. And when a lot of people moved out of the neighborhood, a lot of vacancies were there, many Vietnamese immigrants moved in. And this immigrant group kept this neighborhood going strong for a while. It's even called Little Saigon. But because of where it's located, it's a very desirable part of the city, and many folks started to move in there, increasing the housing costs, increasing the rents. And as a result, many of the Vietnamese immigrants moved out to other parts of town, although there are still some Vietnamese restaurants in the neighborhood, just not many people that live there. And one of the parks that's really cool is called Midtown Park. And on the surface, this looks like an open space for events, and it is. They have different things going on there, festivals, music. But what it really is a soil and water conservation park. There's a man-made bayou there. It's actually a retention pond disguised as a natural swampy area, and it just takes stormwater out. And as you can imagine, stormwater accumulation is a big deal in Houston. But with some of the gentrification came some great urban amenities, a lot of great restaurants, shops, bars, and clubs. One that seems really cool is called Axelrad. A lot of live performances, markets there. They have stand-up comedy, outdoor movies. And even though no one's going to consider Houston to be a very walkable city, they are doing some pretty good things with light rail in this part of town. And now that Midtown's more of a front and center type neighborhood for the city, it makes that whole general downtown into the southwest area just really nice part of town. Okay, staying in the Sun Belt, I'm going to Phoenix, Arizona. In the case of Phoenix, Midtown is located north of downtown and south of uptown. So in that regard, it's the easiest one to find. Mid is between down and up. And the Midtown here is heavily focused on one major north-south street, Central Avenue. This is another Midtown that also has parks on either side of it, and Canto Park and an amusement park is to the west, and to the east is a big golf course. But with this being a Sunbelt town, with most of the development being in the past 60, 70 years or so, even in Midtown, most of the individual housing lots are large. It's almost like suburban-sized lots, but really close to the CBD. So as a result, it's not very walkable, but kind of like Houston, they're doing a pretty good job with some light rail to help make up for it. So this light rail line goes up to uptown and down to downtown, and there are some expansions planned as well. It's led to many businesses going up right along the line where you can just kind of take the train up to the next stop, go to the whatever restaurant or shop is right there. I have made it no secret that Phoenix isn't one of my favorite cities in the country, but they are genuinely trying here with some nice urbanist development. I think the Midtown is a huge part of this, and they're just kind of getting started. There isn't really a Midtown type feel to it yet. It is improving, but there aren't things like a Midtown community group, or there's no midtownphoenix.org website. And with Phoenix being so spread out, there's plenty of room for infill and plenty of folks who would want to live in a more densely populated area if it meant you could get to things more easily by walking or using that light rail line. So check back in 10 years, and Phoenix will be one of my favorite cities in the country. I mean, it won't be, but, you know. Now I'm going back to the Midwest and Midtown Detroit. This is one that's boxed in by freeways. Freeways to the north, south, east, and west define the Midtown neighborhood. It's largely centered on Woodward Avenue, which is Michigan Highway 1, going just north of the CBD. And just like almost all the other Midtowns I mentioned, it's surrounded by anchor-type things that help keep the neighborhood within it pretty nice. Here you have the Medical Center and Children's Hospital, as well as Wayne State University's Medical School to the east. And then to the north of Midtown is the main part of campus of Wayne State, and to the west is where the athletic fields are. And this is another Midtown where it's the main part of the city for the arts. It's home to the beautiful Detroit Institute of Arts, as well as the Contemporary Art Museum. This is also where you have the Cultural Center Historic District and the Detroit History Museum. So those are all some really nice anchors to have in your neighborhood to help prop up Midtown right in the middle of it. Which is good because it was pretty rough the first few times I visited there. In the early 2000s, if you were to go to some place on Woodward in Midtown, you might drive right up to the takeout place where you're going to, or you'd park right in front of it, go in there, come right back out, and just drive away. You wouldn't be hanging out there at all. You certainly wouldn't be walking around on Woodward. So the transformations in this part of town have been pretty big, and there's been a trickle-down effect into some of the directly adjacent residential areas. So you can see these two Google Street images about 10 years apart, two brand new apartment complexes that weren't there, and now they have a Bakersfield. To the west of Midtown are the residential neighborhoods of Jeffries and Woodbridge, and these are pretty nice neighborhoods being gentrified. There's still a lot of Detroit that's really rough and really blighted, but having Midtown as a puzzle piece to kind of fill in to help connect some of these other nice neighborhoods is a big deal for Detroit. So those are the main Midtowns I wanted to discuss, but I couldn't do this video completely without at least mentioning the one in New York. For New York, Midtown is almost like the downtown because this is what most people think of when they think of New York City. Midtown is where you have Times Square, the Empire State Building, Madison Square Garden, the United Nations headquarters, Hell's Kitchen, Hudson Yards, and most of the well-known attractions and museums and things are in this part of town. So even though Midtown Manhattan is on a different level than all the other ones I mentioned, it is still the same general concept between downtown and a park with all of the cool stuff and artsy stuff in the middle. So the overarching theme for this video might be if you're going to visit a city you're not familiar with and you want to know what part of town to go to have some fun, go to Midtown. So that was my look at a handful of midtowns in the US, and of course there are more than I could cover in this one video, but I do want to go over some of the most interesting ones, and a couple of them might become some of the most interesting ones in the near future. But if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve, and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more about geography and fun stuff like this from a nerd. But yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King signing out. I'd like to give a special thanks to my Superior patrons for their support. If you're interested in becoming a Superior patron or perhaps an Erie or Huron patron, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. As always, thank you very much.